Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forests of the night, what immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry?
This is one of the world's rarest cats, the white tiger of Rewa. Only a mere handful of them are left in the world. And this is its cousin, the Bengal tiger. If the lion is king of the jungle in Africa, the tiger is undoubtedly king here in India. Admired for its royal connections and feared as a man-eater, the tiger once roamed India in huge numbers. And then, very suddenly, its numbers dropped until barely 2,000 remained. The tiger could easily have died out completely by now had it not been for one of the world's greatest conservation triumphs, Project Tiger. Today, join us in India as we go on safari after tigers in a very special edition of David Smith's Earthwatch. Hi and welcome to the show. I'm David Smith and we're on the trail of one of the world's most powerful and elusive animals, the tigers of India. In jungles around and in other reserves right across India, a small but steadily increasing number of tigers prey. Now you can't always tell where they're going to appear, so that's why I'm sitting up here safely on this elephant, in the grand style of Maharajas of India. Maharajas were the royalty of India, and they regard tiger as an animal, a symbol of royalty. And it's easy to see why, when you know that the tiger is the largest living cat and the strongest land-living predator in the world. It's powerful and dangerous and worthy of anyone's respect. There are, or were, 8 races of tiger worldwide. Today, 4 of them are almost certainly extinct. Of the rest, all endangered, the Indian tiger is the most common, living in India, Nepal, Bhutan, and Western Burma. Here, all creatures run from the tiger, except one, man, the supreme predator. But until early this century, human attacks on tigers were limited to hunting expeditions or shikars, which were by royal invitation only. The Maharajas even set aside special royal hunting preserves, places where tigers could live and thrive, except on hunting days, of course, and no one was allowed to enter, except the Maharaja and his special guests. It was these hunting preserves which were to become the basis of the game reserves of modern India, but more of that later. To a Maharaja, killing a tiger was a great and noble symbol of manhood. Few were invited to the sport. So in reality, very few tigers were killed by hunting each year in earlier times. Just enough to keep the numbers in reasonable proportions. Right up until the 1850s, there were strict controls over the kinds of weapons that could be used to hunt tigers. Bows like these and arrows, fearsome arrows with hideous-looking tips on them. And spears, long spears with murderous points and a little protector here to stop the animal coming up the spear to attack you. And most ferocious of all, katar, or tiger knife, which was rammed into the tiger and then forced open and dragged out, creating a hideous wound. The point, though, was that this still involved hand-to-hand combat, and so the tiger at least had a sporting chance. At the beginning of this century, when India was still a part of the British Empire, the first recorded tiger census showed a total of 40,000 tigers in India. By 1947, when India won her independence, the tiger population was much the same. The real damage occurred after 1947. At first, the old sporting rules were ignored. The Royal Hunting Expedition became the latest craze for the common man. People flocked in to hunt tiger, some paying up to $20,000 to be in on the kill. The other vital factor after 1947 was that people began to invade the tiger's territory, with settlements and agriculture, cattle grazing, and commercial logging on a huge scale. This drove away or killed the tiger's natural prey, and the hungry tigers instead turned on the villagers' cattle, or even the occasional villager. Well, here's a man who was attacked by a tiger and has lived to tell the tale. This is Subedar Ali. Subedar, what happened?
One
morning I was foraging for elephants along with some other friends. When I tied the elephant under a tree and got up to the tree, clicking the branches, my elephant made some sound and noises which I didn't take care of. Suddenly a tiger leapt over me and ripped off my head, and then when I was underneath him, I prayed to God for forgiveness. He moved back a little, which gave me enough time to come to my elephant. My elephant took me in its tusk and brought me over to this place, which is a campsite. The tiger followed me, and finally finding it an open area, he went into the bushes uphill. And thereafter I was taken to Kashipur for treatment, and then was shifted to All India Medical Institute, where I was operated on a plastic surgery. I was under treatment for 9 months, and these are the scars which are still on my head.
Well, the result of this was that even more tigers were shot and poisoned by the villagers. When the Indian government conducted the All India Tiger Census in 1972, they had a terrible shock. Of the original 40,000 tigers, all they could find left were 1,827. To be fair, the Indians had suspected earlier that things weren't going too well for tigers. Their government actually placed a ban on tiger hunting in 1970. But the census of 1972 really demanded more positive action if tigers weren't to end up stuffed in museums. That positive action began the next year, in 1973, with the creation of Project Tiger. Project Tiger was devised by a special task force of the Indian Board of Wildlife, whose objective was
to ensure maintenance of a viable population of tiger in India and to preserve for all time areas of biological importance as a national heritage.
The then Indian Prime Minister, Indira Gandhi, herself a passionate supporter of conservation, targeted the project by declaring,
"The tiger cannot be preserved in isolation. It is at the apex of a large and complex biotope. Its habitat must first be made inviolate."
What that means is that it's not enough merely to protect the tiger. We have to give the tiger its own protected environment, a place where no human activity is allowed. And that's called a total environmental approach. Well, here it is, the first total environmental approach in India. This is Corbett National Park. Oddly enough, it was named after one of the great white hunters, Jim Corbett, who was later to go on and become a famous author and champion of wildlife conservation. In 1973, this park became the first Project Tiger Reserve in all India. It was a model for what was to follow. The basic scheme of Project Tiger involved setting up a series of tiger reserves, each of which was to consist of a central core, that's the white area here, free of human use, and then a buffer zone around the whole central core in which a small amount of human activity, conservation-oriented and strictly monitored, was allowed. It wasn't an easy task because people had moved into the best areas. By 1973, much of the former Indian wilderness was suffering from human exploitation. Getting people out and nature back in was a daunting task. So it's an enormous tribute to the Indian government that by 1974, 9 great tiger reserves were established across India. Not without troubles. Gunfights with poachers, raids and legal battles were common events at first, but before long, forestry operations, farms and even whole villages were moved out and the core areas for 9 project tiger reserves were established. All of this effort was supported by people from all around the world, including quite a few from Australia, through the efforts of the World Wildlife Fund, which is now called the Worldwide Fund for Animals. And they provided a whole range of equipment, boats, jeeps and radios, and in fact they're still providing support for Project Tiger. So if you're wondering where your donations are going, look around me. Corbett National Park is about 250 kilometres northeast of the Indian capital of New Delhi. Set in the foothills of the Himalayas at a height of between 450 and 1,000 metres. The Ramganga River runs through its hills and valleys, and the whole area has an annual rainfall of about 2.5 metres a year, making this one of the wettest places in India. In fact, the annual monsoon often washes out roads, forcing the park to close from June to November each year. As a result of the rainfall, it's heavily forested, just like similar places in Australia. The predominant type of tree here is a kind of hardwood called sal, and these are sal trees all around me. And there are also mixed deciduous forests on the ridges. There are tigers here, of course, lots of them. So many, in fact, that each year several tigers are killed in territorial battles, and that's a sure sign that their numbers are improving. That doesn't mean we'll see one, of course, because tigers, like all the large predators in India, are nocturnal. That means they come out at night and usually sleep during the daytime. But if you look during the day, you can often see their pug marks or tracks here on the trails or down in the soft mud by the riverbank. This is the Ramganga River. It's a very valuable water supply in Corbett, and a whole range of animals come down to the bank to drink. It's also home to some true river dwellers like the strange Indian alligator or gharial. The park's also home to lots of wildlife. Spotted deer called chital are very common. They're one of the tiger's main prey. You also see a lot of wild boar in the grass. And wild jackals come right up to the tourist bungalows. Wild elephants live on the flats. And the locals even have a baby elephant as a pet. He's only 1 year old, and he won't be ready to ride for another 14 years. But he sure is cute. Corbett National Park also abounds in bird life. The Zoological Survey of India recorded almost 600 different species of birds, including peacocks and various sorts of waterfowl, even a bird called a drongo, though I haven't actually spotted a drongo yet. The most common birds here are the crows and Indian myna birds. The mynas came to Australia from here in the first place, and just like at home, they cluster around the tourist accommodation here in the park. That accommodation ranges from little tents to quite magnificent mansions. So if you're planning a visit, there's bound to be something to suit you. It's all very comfortable, but it does get crowded, so book ahead. When you've had enough of the comforts, you can settle down to the serious business of looking for tigers. There are two ways to do this. One is by elephant, as we've just done, and the other is like this. This is a machan, or watchtower. It's about 6 metres high, which is well out of tigers' reach, and they're scattered all over the park in places where tigers pass, at sunrise and sunset, looking for dinner and a drink. Let's hope the dinner won't be us. What you do is climb the tower, settle down, either before sunrise or around sunset, and you just then watch and hope. It's a great view from up here, but not a tiger in sight. That's partly because tigers are so rare, and partly because they're so well camouflaged. Maybe we'll try a change of scene from this park, one of the wettest, and go to one of the driest. Ranthambore is 160 kilometres from Rajasthan's capital, Jaipur. The park used to be the private hunting reserve of Jaipur's Maharaja, another example of a hunting park which formed the basis of a modern wildlife reserve. If we're going to see tigers, this is the place. It's much drier than other parks, only 75 millimetres of rain a year, and the only reliable water is in several small lakes, meaning that the wildlife has to concentrate around the waterholes. That's ideal for us and for the tigers. The park has a core zone of 17,500 hectares, all dominated by 1,000-year-old Ranthambore Fort. Now, the whole area is steeped in history. There are palaces and the ruins of military outposts all scattered through the hills, all part of the local Maharaja's colourful family history. You know, some people could get pretty upset at the idea of handing over all this family history for a government tiger reserve, but not the Maharaja of Jaipur. Old Jai Singh was a different kind of fellow, and he happily turned over the whole estate when Project Tiger started. He even turned over this building so that you and I could come here and enjoy the whole thing. But the big attraction again is the tiger, and I've been told you can be almost guaranteed to find one here. Now these days at Ranthambore, we hunt tigers with cameras instead of guns, and we drive around to find them in one of these fantastic little jeeps. Let's go. This is incredibly exciting. We've been driving around the park here at Ranthambore for a couple of hours in this little jeep, and suddenly we've actually seen 2 tigers just over there in the grass beside me. Have a look and see if you can see them. Tigers are so well camouflaged that you could be staring one in the face and not even see it. So finding one out here is amazingly difficult. We have to use all our senses and learn to read the language of the bush. Even then, our skills may not help us, as the tiger's prey often finds out too late. Here, there's a tiger eating its prey, in this case a sambar deer. And this is the most dangerous time of all to be near it. This is a killer, savouring its kill, and anything, even another tiger, approaches at its peril. Tigers are very territorial, each one claiming up to 80 square kilometres as its own. At Ranthambore, we saw tigers patrolling their territory with almost complete disdain for any humans nearby. It's not hard to see who's king here. Strangely, we noticed that tigers are today changing their habits. Where once they were strictly creatures of the night, now they are just as often seen in daylight. It's as if, now that the threat of hunting has gone, they're resuming their role as lord and master. Our like extended to seeing a tigress and her cub. It's a large cub, admittedly, but then no one has ever filmed a really small cub with its mother before. The tigress hides its babies far too well for that, and no mother is more devoted or more savagely protective of its young than a tigress. To be here, so close, is the experience of a lifetime. To be close enough to smell them, and the tiger smell is strong, as I found out, is unforgettable. In the past, few people got this close to tigers and lived to tell the tale. And I was thrilled to see that these magnificent cats still have a tale to tell. Well, there you go. Dusk in the desert at Ranthambore, and by dawn, I'm 8 hours drive away in the wetlands of Corbett Tiger Reserve. The magic of television. A magic carpet ride? Perhaps it's just the magic of India. We were really lucky. We saw lots and lots of tigers, and we met lots of people who hadn't seen a single one, even after days of searching. One thing's for sure, you'll have more chance of seeing tigers than we did, because there'll be more tigers here when you arrive. In fact, tiger numbers have increased dramatically from 1973, when there were about a little under 2,000, to 3,500 today. And the same thing is true of tiger reserves. There are now 15 tiger reserves right across India. In addition, there are 53 national parks and 247 wildlife sanctuaries. That adds up to a total of 90,000 square kilometres devoted to wildlife. And there's more on the way. It's really quite fantastic what the Indians have done. They've drafted far-sighted ecological and environmental policies and made them work, and all that in a country crowded with more than 750 million people. It's a remarkable achievement, and I salute the Indian government for it. It's really a model the rest of the world could well follow, and I hope that one day you'll come here and see this for yourselves. What do you think?